All right. Welcome back. So, yes, I do want to talk about Femi Otedola was trending earlier on today for good reasons. For good reasons, it was he made it to the chairman board seat of First Bank, FBN Holdings Nigeria PLC, and I have to touch on that. Okay, there's so much to learn in his journey. Okay, and we're gonna take some time with that before we get into the Bobad story. Um, but yes, today is gonna be power packed as usual. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen with you. First and foremost, what do we have today? We do have Mr. Femi Otedola. All right, let me sit tight because this is gonna be fun for me personally. All right, so if it's not fun for you, I'm sorry, but this one is personally for me because you know we're gonna have a conversation today. All right, so Femi Otedola 14 things about his journey to becoming the chairman of First Bank, FBN Holdings PLC. Okay, and I'm going to give you 14 things, but I'm also going to add my own little sauce and interpretations around what I think I am learning, and hopefully you two can pick up some tips from that. Okay, Femi Otedola 14 things about his journey to becoming the chairman of First Bank. So today they announced. Today is the February 1st, 2024. It was trending for this very, very, very reason. All right, I'm reading. I'm going to first of all read a little bit of what is on Premium Times, Nigerian newspaper, Nigerian publication. Femi Otedola emerges chairman of First Bank Holdings. Mr. Otedola became a non-executive director of FBN Holdings on 14th August 2023, months after he acquired a substantial stake in First Bank. Okay, so obviously you have to own a decent amount of that company. It's a publicly traded company, of course, right? Femi Otedola, billionaire businessman and chairman of Geregu, I'm not sure if that's how it's pronounced, Geregu Power PLC, today emerged as the chairperson of the board of FBN Holdings PLC, whose flagship arm is First Bank. I've personally known First Bank all my life. Okay. The change of guard happened at a meeting of the board of directors of the group in Lagos on Wednesday, company insiders told Premium Times. Mr. Otedola succeeded Ahmad Abdullahi, a seasoned economist who was appointed chair of the holding company on 17th December 2021. Mr. Otedola became is the financial institution's biggest and only substantial shareholder, holding a 5.6% stake. He has had investment in port agency, shipping, storage, and insurance brokerage. In 2007, he acquired a controlling interest in African. Okay, so we're going to get into all of that. The bottom line is that as of today, he's been announced as the chairman of First Bank Holdings. All right. Shout out to Babis Wayne. Say hello, just subscribed yesterday despite the fact that I've been listening to you for like 8 months. Nice to be here and thanks for all you do. I appreciate you, sir or ma'am. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. All right. So everybody please hit the like button so we can ping everybody else into the room. All right. I know it's Thursday. All right. We're going to see about something here. All right. Good. A couple of things again. 14 things that I want us to kind of like extract from this man's journey. Okay. Now it's very easy to read this kind of stuff and just assume, well, I'm sure you know that it's not overnight, but it's also okay to go in a little bit deeper and see, maybe we can learn one or two things. The first thing is that he started in printing and printing press imports, then transitioned to fuel trading and logistics in the 1980s. Mr. Femi Otedola was born in 1962, I think, or maybe 62 years old, one of the two. Let me see when he was born. All right, so there's nothing overnight here, just like there's no such thing in real life. He's 61 years old, okay? He was born in 1962. Yep. All right, so that's number one. He started way back. In fact, there's some stories that says he started, he tells the story of how he used to, I think, did he do shoe polish for his father's friends? His father was a governor of Lagos State, okay? So, but a lot of people might even assume that he had a lot to start with. Not necessarily true, okay? It depends on how you look at it, okay? So that's the first thing I want you to learn, that I'm learning as well about him. I'm actually finding out for the first time. So we're going through it together right now. Now, in 2003, he founded Xenon Petroleum and Gas Limited, okay? This is one of the reasons why you hear a lot of people say oil and gas in Nigeria. Like, everybody wants to be a part of it, right? Most people are not even aware of what that entails. But anyway, he started trading. He founded Xenon Petroleum and Gas Limited in 2003, investing heavily in storage and distribution of infrastructure. Wow. Okay, so anytime you hear about any industry out there, oil and gas, real estate, anything, you don't have to be the one actually dredging oil. You can just find other arenas. You can even get into oil and gas by way of IT. Yeah. So again, back then, obviously, it would be things like storage, infrastructures, just ways that you can add value to that industry, and you can make just as much money, if not more, than the people that are directly working in it. Okay. Number 3, the third thing of 14 things that we can learn about Femi Otedola today. He acquired controlling shares in African Petroleum, AP. How many people remember AP? You remember those petrol stations, not gas stations, petrol stations. You remember those petrol stations called AP back in the days? As far back as 2003, he owned controlling shares in that company. Rebranded it to, I think it's pronounced Forte Oil. I'm not sure. I haven't lived in Nigeria in 25 years, so I don't know how to pronounce this stuff, right? Bear with me, okay? The lessons is what I want us to focus on. And expanded the fuel retail network, okay? He rebranded it and expanded the fuel. So personally, I don't recall ever seeing Forte Oil. So for those of you that lived in Nigeria in more recent times, you probably know what that is, okay? What I remember growing up is AP. All right, so that's interesting. Number 4 was going to number 4. Number 4, by mid 2000s, Forte Oil was the largest fuel retailer in Nigeria, making Otedola a billionaire. Okay. Now, some of you probably already know his story that he, quote unquote, the story that he almost lost everything with just one house left, right? You've heard those stories before, right? All right, that story is half truth, half lie, okay? But it's probably the impact of that on him personally is probably all the way true. We're going to talk about that here in a second. All right, so, but by mid 2000s, it was a billionaire. Now, billionaire in terms of naira or dollars, I'm not clear on that yet. Today, he is a billionaire. It's worth, according to Forbes now, it's worth $1.3 billion. All right, so either way, it doesn't matter, right? Anyway, so number 5, global crisis of 2008 significantly impacted oil prices and the banking sector. Okay, obviously that financial crisis, starting with real estate and the folding of everything literally for the next 1 to 3 years after that, depending on where you fell in that equation, affected everybody, obviously including oil and gas. Now, I remember going to London in 2008 and I was like, wow, everybody is talking about the recession here just as much as they were talking about it here in the United States. I also remember, I think I went to Nigeria too, and it was the same thing. It was basically worldwide, right? So that affected everybody. And number 6, okay, so we're talking about the setbacks now, okay? The setbacks are massive. Otedola relied heavily on bank loans for expansion, facing difficulties refinancing due to the crisis. At the time, I was personally heavily in real estate. I remember the bank shutting down on everybody, literally everybody. Everybody was holding tight to whatever they had left. And so if you were overly exposed, which people like Otedola would probably be exposed, right? You know, you're always thinking that everything's going to remain, everything's going to kind of stay the same, right? We're always thinking everything will stay the same, right? Until it doesn't stay the same, right? Because we're human beings, regardless of where you fall in the, in this equation. If everything is working out well for you, at least you hope it continues to work out well, right? So number 7, obviously, when I say exposed, so those of you that don't understand how, what they call it, equity markets, that's the word I'm looking for right now. I forgot. But anyway, it's not just your money that you invest. You also tend to invest other people's money. Okay, it's essentially what you will see in options trading, right? They call it trading. Is it trading? No, not trading equities, right? Is it trading equities? That's a word I'm looking for right now. My brain has frozen. But anyway, margin calls. Okay, basically people are trading on margins. Okay. Basically, they are trading off of other people's trading. They are trading on derivatives of other people's money, right? They're using other people's money, multiple levels over and over. That's what we're talking. So margin calls and debt pressure forced him to sell significant assets, including his majority stake in Forte Oil in 2014. Now, what does that mean? Selling, if you don't understand how this works, shout out to Natu. Natu, welcome. If you don't understand how this works, right, you're like, well, he sold it. He collected the money, Abi. Well, the last place you ever want to find yourself when you own lots of assets is to be in a desperate position to have to sell them. What that means is that you probably end up selling banjo. You end up you oversell, meaning you'll be selling very cheaply, right? You'll be selling for a lot less than you could potentially sell for if you're not in a desperate position. You know what I mean? So when they say margin call and debt pressure, meaning he was owing a lot of money directly and indirectly, and he had to sell a lot of assets desperately. Okay. And I know because a lot of people that are also acquired their real estate back at that time were people that were also desperately selling. Not just desperately selling, they also had mortgages on those houses, and the banks had to desperately get rid of those assets. They called them underperforming assets at the time, and people like us were able to pick them up cheaply. But it was my first time coming to business, so I thought it would always be like that. I didn't really understand everything that led on to that moment, so I didn't really prepare for the day that things will reset to. Listen, that's another story that I will tell you another day. Okay, but when you have underperforming assets and you have to sell very cheaply, it's a bad idea. You're going to lose a lot, right? Because all those people buying them cheaply from you, those assets will end up appreciating when everything resets, and then you don't own them anymore, but you sold them short, right? So yeah. So number eight, oil price crashed. Okay, I think this was the one thing that really took him out, that a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people just say, oh, Otedola lost a lot of money, he had only one house left, and that's all they say, and then they end the story. Well, there's a little bit more to it. There was an oil price crash as part of the effects of everything that was going on at the time. Okay, and so there's a quote here. As you mentioned, Otedola had a massive shipment of diesel on the high seas when the oil price plummeted from $146 per barrel to $34. So imagine you bought about 200 of these cups, right? And you bought them at, let's just say you bought them at $120. You're balling, right? You're happy. Everything is all good. 120 naira. Let's say 120 naira. No, let's just use dollars. You bought them at $15, right? But you bought them, in your opinion, when you bought them, you were happy, right? They were actually worth $25, but you bought them at wholesale, right? So you bought them for let's call it $17, right? But they're actually worth $25. As in, like, when you bring them down to Nigeria, you'll be able to sell each one of these for $25, right? And then suddenly, as you were shipping them down to Nigeria, in the middle of the road, right, the market value of this thing, because of everything else that's going on, we call them environmental, market forces, market factors, right? Suddenly, these things are now worth, let's say, $7. Remember, you purchased them at $17, right? In the hopes that, in the next 2 or 3 weeks, the ship will arrive in Nigeria. You start selling this for $25, and that means you're making about $8 a piece on each one, right? But by the time you arrive in Nigeria, that this shipment has arrived in Nigeria is now worth $7 each. That means you have to sell them at $7 each. That means you're taking a loss of $10. That's exactly what happened to Otedola. So now, something that was worth $146 per barrel was now worth $34. This single event resulted in what did they call it? In a loss of over $480 million. I don't care how rich you are. Imagine waking up one day and you're finding out that you are now worth $480 million less than what you were worth. I don't care how rich you were, right? You can only imagine, right? So either he had only one house left or not, it doesn't matter. Bottom line is that this must have been a tough situation for him. All right, let's go to number 9. Naira devaluation. Okay, obviously we're still dealing with that today, right? As of yesterday, what I was told, I didn't really check myself, is that Naira is now, $1 is now 1,500 Naira. All the way from last time I heard anything was 1,000 Naira, which at that 1,000 Naira was already wild. It was sitting at 800 Naira for a while. Now it's 1,500 Naira to $1. What that means is that people's cash, the value of their cash is now worth less if it's sitting in Naira, right? So obviously a billionaire who kind of like a lot of his assets are in, they are distributed in collection of Nairas, and the market that he serves is Naira. That's obviously a bad day for him, right? So number 9, Naira devaluation. The Nigeria currency, the Naira, also underwent a significant devaluation during the crisis. It's still going. At that time, I think Naira, what was Naira in 2008? How much was Naira? How much was Naira to dollars in 2008? Let me see if I can find that. Oh, wow. Don't tell me that's what I'm looking at right now. Wow. It's been a long time coming. Jesus Christ. This is sad. For what I'm seeing, it was averaging at around 117 Naira to $1 back in 2008. Well, it's 1,500 now, so go figure. Anyway, number 10, high interest rates, right? So people like Otedola, they are also sitting on a lot of debts, right? It's when you factor everything and you do the net that they are now worth a certain amount of money. When you subtract their assets from their liability, now you have their net worth, right? That's how it works. Am I correct? Am I correct or correct? Is it right or right? Right? So high interest rate, if you're sitting on a lot of debt, running all these companies, right? High interest rate at the time, obviously will take him out too. So high interest rate as the banking sector tightened credit due to the financial crisis. So tightened credit literally means interest, the cost of money increases. Oh yeah, for every $1 you have in your pocket, there is a cost. Money costs money. Oh yeah. How do I say that so that it doesn't sound, what's the better way to say that? I guess it's that simple. Money costs money. Okay, so we call it interest rates, right? And you have interest rate, you have inflation, basically the money devaluing, and they use interest rates. The government will use interest rates to regulate things, to tighten market, or to make market more accessible, or to encourage people to spend more money, right? So obviously when everything is uptight, and nobody's willing to let go of money, it simply means the money is expensive. It means it costs you more money to get more money. So a lot of these people, they borrow money at very aggressive, with aggressive terms, right? And those aggressive terms might include, listen, we know we gave you this term, but just in case of this, that, about 50 million other things, we might decide that you owe us the money back immediately, and the interest will start increasing, like a lot of what we call variable interest rate and cost of money, right? So, and that's what they're talking about here. As the banking sector tightened credit due to the financial crisis, Otedola's already substantial debt accrued even higher interest, right? So, for those of us regular people, what do you mean? The interest is the interest. How can it accrue? Well, if you're playing aggressive games, like trying to be a billionaire, you're buying big companies, big assets, and things like that, there's some terms that they have to put in those loans to protect the bank as well, because there's a lot of money at stake, right? So if you find yourself in a situation of crisis like the recession that happened in 2008, you might have them calling a lot of those money back, which means bring the money or is increasing in cost, So according to this highlight here, it says it led to an estimated loss of additional $320 million, right? The devaluation of Naira, the one I was covering earlier on, led to an additional $258 million, right? You remember earlier on, we talked about another $480 million, right? How much is it worth at that time that all this money is evaporating like this, right? It's crazy. Anyway, number 11. Then we also had, obviously, the stock market crash. So if you own a publicly traded company, you are usually holding on to a high stake, right? Which is supposed to be a good thing on a good day, right? The bad thing is that you don't want to be selling, because that usually means that you don't believe in your own company. You want to be holding on to a ton of it. I have a friend who is actually, I might bring him on to come and discuss this kind of stuff. He might do a better job at explaining this for us. I'll see if I can reach out to him on some of these sessions. Okay. All right. So stock market crash. The global stock market crash also impacted Otedola's holdings, resulting in a further loss of around $160 million. Are you doing the math? Are you doing the maths? Is the mathing for you? Okay. All right. So at the time, okay, number 12 highlight, we're almost there, of 14, right? At the time, according to reports, he had to sell almost 200 houses in Lagos alone to try to pay off. I mean, what kind of houses are this? This must be luxury houses too, right? To try to pay off $1 billion in debt at one point. 200 houses, $1 billion in debt? I guess. But again, having to sell your assets is not a good day for anybody. It's just sad. Okay. All right. Number 13. Before I go to number 13, let me read a direct quote from Otedola. These are the things he had to say according to, I guess he did an interview with CNBC at one point. Okay. Let me just read the whole article. All right. So it says, life was rosy for Femi Otedola until it took a sudden turn, leaving him billions in the red. He had to start all over again. The article below tells the story. The first appeared in Forbes Africa. Let's see. Okay, this is his quote. He said, I had about 93% of the diesel market on my fingertips. Okay, remember, it was controlling a big market share with the Forte oil, right? All of a sudden, oil prices collapsed, and I had over 1 million tons of diesel on the high seas, and the price dropped from $146 to $34. Okay, here's another quote. I had two options. Okay, no, wait. When the dust settled, Otedola had lost over $480 million due to the plunge in oil prices, $258 million through the devaluation of the Naira, a further $320 million due to the accruing interest, which is the high interest rate stuff, right? The cost of money, right? And then finally, $160 million when the stocks crashed. And then he said, I had two options, either to commit the big ultimate S, meaning to delete himself, okay, or to weather the storm. I decided to weather the storm. I just knew it was a phase I had to go through. You see, God prepares you for greater things. And of course, experience is the best teacher, so I had to learn my lessons. I took the bitter pill. All right. And then he goes on to say, you cannot compete with destiny. So it was my destiny to make billions every month and lose billions as well. That's something that a lot of people don't pay attention to, right? That last part of it, and lose billions as well. I said to myself, I was not going to have friends and enemies. I was only going to have competitors. Okay. All right, so this was the early business that they're talking about here. They said he would provide manicure and pedicure services to his father and his friends and write them a receipt for payments when he was only 6 years old. All right, now he said, after I lost the money, something that struck me was that my father had always been my role model in life. And the first thing I had to do was to protect his name. So the weight, like people, well, that's just money. It's just like, no. Money is also driven by emotions, greed, and fear, right? Especially when your name is at reputations. And by the way, the bank, you need them to trust you, right? So, but if you've delivered before in the past and everybody's going through it, again, it's easier said than done. But when you're going through, everybody's going through it, the wrong move can completely take you out, okay? He had a policy. Honesty was the best policy. That's the father. So I had to protect that name and his integrity. Just after the global banking crisis had struck, the Nigerian government established the Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria. Remember that AMCON that was taking over companies and stuff, right? Now he says experience is the best teacher. I didn't have a proper structure. And I also put the blame on the banks for not advising me. All they were interested in was the profits. Yep. The banks did that back in 2005 to 2008. They were giving all this. Remember the subprime loan? Go and Google subprime loans, right? And I think that's actually what took the whole world into that downward spiral. They were not interested in sustainability of the business. They were short-sighted, and all they were interested in was throwing money at me. So they never advised me. And then he goes on to say, so we got a reputable firm to value my asset. I had about 184 flats. There you go. That's the story right there. Which I gave up. I was the largest investor in the Nigeria banking sector, which I gave up. I was also a major shareholder of African Finance Corporation, AFC, and I was the chairman of Transcorp Hilton, which I think is Tony Olumelu now, right? I was a shareholder in Mobile Oil Nigeria Limited, the second largest shareholder in Chevron, Texaco, Visa Phone, and several companies which they valued, and I had to give up to repay the debt. You have to give all of this up. Otedola was left with 2 properties. This is according to CNBC, so there's some truth to this, right? His office space and a 34% stake in African Petroleum. Well, a 34% stake in African Petroleum is a lot, right? But it's not a lot when you've lost almost $1 billion, right? Again, perspective. I always use the phrase frame of reference, right? When you say I made $2 yesterday, what do you mean by you made $2? $2 with respect to what did you make the day before? What percentage increase is that, right? Percentage is the numbers that actually matter the most, not flat numbers. Okay. All right. So, which he rebranded to Forte Oil in 2014, bounced back. So this bounce back that's going on with Otedola right now, it's not his first time. So he's probably in they can keep calculating his money, but he kind of have, after a few times you have an idea of where things are going. You can see something, you have foresight. You can see some things from afar, regardless of how they value them in the marketplace, it wouldn't matter, right? So at one point his net worth was 1.8 billion. It's now at 1.3. Again, the ups and downs at this point, it doesn't really matter, right? All right. So, and this report I'm reading was from November 12, 2016. So now it's declined and now it's back at $1.3 billion again. Go figure. It doesn't matter. Okay. but it matters when you're losing $1 billion. So again, it depends on losing $1 billion compared to 1.3, 1.8. That's a lot. That's like a whole half of your net worth. That's a lot. All right, so that was that. So that's the report on number 12 right there. So he had to sell a lot of assets. Again, having to sell your assets is no fun. Okay. The people that don't understand how that works, they might look at that. They might say, "Hey, maybe you make money. Why you are selling it?" What do you mean you make money? How much money? Right? All right, so number 13. Here's the 13th thing you should know about this situation. Despite the setbacks, Otedola diversified his interest into power generation through Geregu Power, acquiring significant stakes. Okay, power generation, I mean, on the common sense tip right now for Nigeria is probably a big deal. Okay, because Nigeria is suffering from power, and but I'm sure that's not just the only fact you need. If you're trying to invest in power, you need to know a lot more than that. But just like when you're investing in anything, you need to understand fundamentals, right? And not be swayed by the regular day-to-day moves. You want to understand the fundamentals, some fundamentals, before you put your money in anything. Okay? Because at the end of the day, if you don't understand the fundamentals, you're probably better keeping that money under the pillow. Just read up on the company you want to invest in and make sure you believe in it, right? Which is the reason why it's a bad idea for someone to be selling their assets. It shows that they no longer believe in it, and then everybody's hoping that they believe in their own stuff. So all these investors will start pulling their money out. When people, again, pulling their money out, meaning they're selling assets, is a bad story whenever that happens. Okay. Number 14, he also became the largest individual shareholder in First Bank of Nigeria. That was some few months ago. And now he's the chairman. Okay. Now he is now. So the 15th thing, a bonus 15, is that he is now the chairman of FBN Holdings, right? What does that mean? Okay. So on the surface, it doesn't necessarily mean that his money increases, right? Obviously. But behind the scenes, it means a lot to be the chairman of the board of a whole First Bank. That is a big deal. And considering that he owns majority stake at 5.6, that means there's a lot of investors. That means there's a lot of money moving. That means there's volume. If you don't know what volume means when it comes to buying and trading assets and stuff like that, that's another thing you want to study. You want assets that has a lot of volume behind it, because the lower the volume, the more vulnerable that asset is to the general marketplace, which is another reason why you see people being able to pump Bitcoin anyhow, and then you don't want to be at the mercy of such emotional roller coasters with your money. Okay, so being a major stakeholder at 5.6 in First Bank and being the chairman, that's a big deal. So they might even reevaluate his assets altogether and then call it now 1.8 or something like that. But this is a big deal. I learned a lot in this. Okay, so hopefully you learned a lot in it too. Just go back and go look at each one of those highlights, right? There's something you can take away from it in any aspect of your life, right? Even if it's just as simple, right? Even if it's just as simple as just knowing that in any endeavor in life, right? Any endeavor in life, it's going to take, like, if you're going to be called success in any way, Yoruba people say isalero olegbi. Whenever people said that, okay, I've told you guys this here before, but I'm going to say it. I don't say it often enough. When I say isalero olegbi, they said the direct translation, let me see if there's a translation for that, isalero olegbi. Let me see if there is something there. Google has been trying these days, so let's see. Okay, somebody has tried to translate this. There's a Yoruba adage that I internalized for the longest time. Okay, where's the translation now? let me see. It's so easy to give up what to carry on when everything. Let me see if that's what that means. Let me see. Hold on one second. This is very, very important. Isalero Olegbin, beneath wealth is rottenness. I like that. Okay. Isalero. This is Yoruba language. Okay. Olegbin. And what I thought it meant for a long time is not what it meant. Okay. My big uncle, the late Reverend Canon Fabuegun, who was a wealthy person, was visiting New York City, and I went to see him. And then I asked him. I was so curious. I was curious. I mean, he passed on in 2008. I had so many questions for him by the time he passed on that I didn't get to answers to. But nonetheless, I learned this from him. So Isalero Olegbin, beneath wealth is rottenness, right? And many people interpret that as all rich people are dirty. That's what most people interpret that as. And when I asked him, now you might say, of course, he's a wealthy person, so he will have a different meaning. No, but the meaning he gave me made a lot more sense. He said what it means is that what people have to go through when you are seeing them as wealthy is like there's a lot of shit eating. He didn't say it exactly that. There's a lot of there's a lot of shameful things you've gone through. There's a lot of trials and tribulations that you've overcome to be seen as a big right now. And most people will never know to what extent that is. But most people interpret that as it means you've gone to a babalawo to do something. And maybe it can mean that too, but I'm like, never mind that meaning. What it means is that you're going to have to sow in order to reap. And what you have to sow sometimes is not just the seeds from a physical, tangible standpoint. Sometimes it's all of these forces that you have to fight against, internalized, internally, mentally, emotionally, societal-wise, shame, losing everything. Losing everything is never easy. Being broke, especially after you've been seen as somebody who is good, trust me, you don't want that if you can avoid it, right? But that's what some of these people have gone through. Imagine losing $1 billion after being recorded as worth $1.8 billion on the Forbes list. Just think about that. That's the real meaning of that. Anyway, so that's Otedola. I wanted to profile Otedola today, and that's what we have right there. Let me know if there's anything that you learned about him too that you might want to add on to this, or context you want to add on to this, or some corrections. Maybe you're close to him, I don't know. Just put that in the comment below, and let's move on. I will be back in about 20 seconds.
It's your love that I've been missing. I miss all your hugs, your touching and kissing. Me love on the floor, the couch in the kitchen. One love enough, we done enough.